Hi, Elis. Hi, Mike. How does the offer of free beer sound to you guys?
Inconceivable. It will never happen.
Sounds like a dream. It's a dream world, isn't it?
No, it is not. Listen to this. Our friends at beer52.com are giving you the opportunity to sip 8 free exclusive craft beers from around the world.
I'm still not entirely sure that I believe you, but still, that's all well and good, right? So how? Tell me how.
I mean, that's 2 more than 6. What are the details, Steff?
Solid maths. All you need to do is go to www.beer52.com/distant and cover £4.95 for the postage. The case will be delivered straight to your doorstep and you don't even need to leave the house.
Yeah. I mean, technically, we're not allowed to leave the house anyway, are we?
Beer 52 are beer pioneers, gentlemen. They are going around the world to find the best and most interesting beer from the greatest small batch breweries on planet Earth. No surprise then that they are the world's most popular craft beer discovery club. Each month, Beer 52 deliver a case with a different theme. Themes have included Germany, Korea, Norway, South Africa, California, Finland, and many more, but they have not forgotten their roots. As an independent UK company, Beer 52 are also passionate about the UK craft beer scene. The beauty of Beer 52 is that they will not and do not hold you to ransom. There's no lock-in. You can leave at any time.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good, but I mean, you know me, Steff. I'm all about the snacks.
As well as your individual beers, Mike, you will receive a cheeky snack. You like magazines, Elis?
Well, I'm a confident reader, Steff.
Okay, do you like the award-winning craft beer magazine Ferment?
Oh, I mean, it sounds right up my alley.
There you go. Do you like dark beers? No, that's okay. You can opt for the light beer plan. It's easy.
You just go to www.beer52.com/distant to get your first case of 8 beers for free.
I'll just recap that, Alan, Steff. That is beer52.com/distant. Beer52.com. That's the word beer, right? Then the numbers 5 and 2 makes 52.com.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Socially Distant Sports Bar. A simple idea. We each bring 2 sports clips from YouTube, a sports book to each episode, and one of us chooses a documentary. We are all still more locked down than that boxer from prison from episode 2. Mike, how's your week been?
Really good, Steff. My birthday was this week, but I'll elaborate on that later. But yeah, very, very nice. Thank you.
Okay. Elis, yourself? Good week?
Good week, and I have to thank you for your recommendation of The Test, and a new era for Australia's team, the documentary we covered on last week's show, because It is my new obsession. I've watched 5 of the 8 episodes, and the bit, spoiler alert, I'm sorry, it's a spoiler, the bit where the players admit to Justin Langer that they are intimidated by him is just an amazing piece of television. I mean, you know, we'll be talking about fly on the wall stuff in today's show anyway. Yeah. But it is one of the best documentaries, full stop, I've ever seen, I think, and I am.
Agreed.
It's the way they all sit around and Kawaja is the only one with the guts to say,
yeah.
Mate, we're all a little bit scared of you.
We're scared of you, sorry. And do you know what it reminded me of? The way that he uses people like Adam Gilchrist and Ricky Ponting. So he's got all of these legends from, you know, a completely dominant era of Australian cricket helping him out. And also players from before that as well. So he's got all of these legends helping him out. And it reminded me of something that Mike said, where Gareth Edwards was unable to offer his incredible expertise to the Welsh Rugby Union team of the 1980s because he'd been banned from the game for making profits out of an autobiography that was published after he'd retired. And when I see, you know, Ponting in the nets and Gilchrist offering advice in the dressing room, it makes me think of all of the Welsh talent in lots of sports that got lost because of committee men and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And also, because it's not a particularly good Australian side, of course they're intimidated by it. It'd be like if, when we were playing our second 15 in the early 90s, because of all our top players went north to rugby league.
Yeah.
It'd be like if, some of the players we had playing for us then were being coached by Gareth Edwards or JPR. They'd be like, well, sorry.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
We can't do what you're asking us to because
we're not the best team in the world
because
anymore.
we're not geniuses.
It's like when...
to be fair to you, that is a long way of saying, I'm fine, thanks, Steff. It's not about it.
Yeah, I cannot.
gone well, mate.
I cannot stop thinking about this documentary because
evidently,
it's so good. Yeah, that's so sorry.
If you, like Elis, like previous episodes, we are up and rolling on plenty of social media outlets. We are at Distant Pod on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram if you want to get in touch with us. We've also set up some playlists on YouTube for you, so it's easier for you to find all of our selections. So if you search for Socially Distant Sports Bar on YouTube, we've got playlists for every episode there, so you can find every clip that we're talking about as we go along. Mike, you are first up in round one this week. What is your choice?
Now, people know that I like American things. It's been mentioned in previous podcasts. My favourite player, my favourite American football player of all time is a chap called Dick Butkus. Yeah, his name's Dick Butkus, Steff.
I can't get past that. That's
no, yeah, I can see you sniggering there on the Zoom screen. You wouldn't say it to his face, by the way. My favourite player is Dick Butkus.
I hadn't noticed that, but now I can't stop.
You've got two choices in life. You either are belittled for the rest of your life, or you turn into what Dick Butkus became.
Well, exactly. Well, I can safely say he went for option B there, because even though he played for my favourite team's arch rivals, so the Chicago Bears, like the longest rivalry in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers. So this would be like I don't know. It'd be like a Liverpool fan having a favourite player as Eric Cantona, right? So he's my favourite player. He played in the 60s and the early 70s. But what just... I had a tape when I was a kid on VHS called Crunch Time, the NFL's hardest hitters. And it was like 6 of the biggest hitters at the time. And Dick Butkus was on there. And it was within Channel 4 days when there wasn't a lot of football on TV, NFL football on TV, just an hour a week. And I was obsessed with him. And that was before the internet. So any little bit of Dick Butkus action I could get my hands on in the 80s, Steff. I couldn't get enough of Dick in the 80s. So it is... Just watch this clip and you'll see why I love him so much.
From his personality to the impact of his tackles, everything Dick Butkus did was memorable. Although he played on only 2 winning teams, he did not lower his standards to fit the company. He was Moby Dick in a goldfish bowl.
It winds me up a bit. I played a bit of rugby. I played a little bit of American football at university as well, at a very low standard. British university as well. I mean, none of that UCLA nonsense. Just people who don't get the game, who think that for some reason that you put a pair of shoulder pads and helmet on, you're in some way emasculated slightly. I mean, what they don't realise is that helmet is used principally as a weapon by the defensive players. And it's there principally to stop getting killed with the offensive players. Right?
It's a bit like thinking that boxing gloves are there to protect the other boxer's face, whereas they're actually there to protect your hands.
Yeah, and you get more of a beating because you're wearing gloves, because the other person's wearing. And the same in football. Obviously, we won't go down the head injuries route right now, but you watch Butkus play, and I just love that. I mean, you know what I'm like anyway. I love that sort of. Before it became commercialised, he played for the love of football.
Yeah.
And he seems like such a nice bloke these days. And he reminds me a lot of my dad. He looks almost identical to my dad in the day as well. My dad was like an enforcer on his rugby team, and Butkus was like the enforcer on the Chicago Bears. And as they get older, they look similar now. It's quite weird. I can't get enough of him. And what is remarkable about him, and it's mentioned in that clip, is when you see players that are at the absolute zenith of their profession, playing in terrible, terrible teams. He was never on a good team. He was on a losing team nearly his whole professional life and kept going to the Pro Bowl, which is the best, It was always on him.
Why didn't he get transferred to a better team?
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say that because it's a very different system. So he was the Bears' sort of marquee player.
Right.
Right. So he was. Fans are coming to see Dick Butkus. You know, people are listening to when he did his syndicated radio shows and TV shows and stuff. He was about the only good thing they had, and there's no. It's not a question of money in the NFL. It wasn't like someone's going to come in and pay you, $5 million for Dick Butkus. That's not going to happen. All you're going to get is they're going to give you draft picks and players. Well, you're not going to get a player that's better than him, and your draft pick's probably not going to end up as good as him either. So as long as you keep his salary payable, which they did, then you're not going to like. And that is why players tend to stay with clubs for longer, I suppose, in the NFL.
I mean, this will happen with Harry Kane. This is the one I'm thinking of, but he will eventually say, I want to win a Champions League or I want to win a Premier League, and he will go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So do they not think, well, I'd like to win a Super Bowl, so I'm going to go to the, whoever the best side are in the NFL at the time. Do they not think in those terms? Or is it not that easy? I don't know anything about it.
I think they think in those terms, but I think the difference in the two sports and the way the two sports are run is that, we mentioned it briefly before, is that players have a lot less power in the NFL than they do, say, a footballer in the Premier League or in the Serie A or La Liga, right? It's not like I want to go and win a Champions League or get in a top 4 club, so I want to go somewhere else, right? That doesn't. If the owner doesn't want you to go, you're not going. It's not a question of sitting out. It's not a question of. I mean, what you could do here, if you decided to, if you were Harry Kane and you got some huge offer from Real Madrid, right?
Yeah.
And they said, well, I'm not going to play, and I'll just sit out. Then you could sit out, and eventually Real Madrid will say, well, come and play for us, and here's your 120 million pounds, and we'll take Harry Kane, right? In the NFL, you can't go anywhere else for a kickoff. There's only the NFL. There was those 26 teams, right, in the country. Nowhere else in the world played it, and all the owners worked together as almost like a cartel, right? So none of those owners would have offered Butkus a contract unless the Bears wanted to sell Butkus or trade Butkus, and that wouldn't happen. So, once an ownership in America, especially in the 70s, it's changed a bit now with free agency and other things. But the best thing about those NFL films is what they would do in those days is there was a bloke called John Facenda, who was like this bass baritone. I think he was a singer originally, but
really
he did all the commentary for NFL films. So they were run by an affiliate of the NFL. But they got this John Facenda in, and he would just write his own scripts. And it's worth going through a lot of the older stuff with him because they're so good. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, everybody listened.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Right? And then, so one place said, he was Hollywood handsome, but cowboy tough. I thought, oh, come on. Do you know what I mean? So, so Dick Butkus, who I absolutely adore, and just playing the game in that, and he was battered. He was absolutely battered.
Well, his body is in bits, isn't it? I read his
Wikipedia
ankles,
page.
His
shoulders, it's crazy.
One leg is about 1.5 feet shorter than the other. They considered banning NFL completely at the start of the 20th century because people were dying playing it.
The president sort of stepped in and said to the big, it's like our version of Oxford and Cambridge. So your Harvards and your Princetons and your Yales all played college football, but players were dying. I think in 1 year, 30 players died.
Yeah.
And the president said, and these were like the brightest, best minds of America, playing college amateur sport. And the president said, either you stop people dying or I'll ban the sport. The bottom line, and it's the same in boxing, is you want to see those big hits.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're in Soldier Field there watching Dick Butkus and there's 70,000 of you crowded in the Soldier Field, you want to see him absolutely. Can I use a swear word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. Absolutely.
You went big
somebody.
last week.
I want to see him. I know, but I had about 3 points last week.
And I watched it, and I couldn't. In terms of big hitage, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I thought, so how is he not getting injured then? And then, because as a football fan or a soccer fan, to avoid any confusion, I thought, it's the principle that old football men say all the time when things like Match of the Day, if you go in hard to a 50-50, you're less likely to get hurt. I thought that's what he was doing. He was just
like my dad.
He was going in so hard.
You went in too soft.
He wasn't getting hurt. He wasn't getting hurt, and that's how he was getting away with it. And then I looked him up on Wikipedia and realised that he was getting horrifically injured all the time, and his body is in pieces. In terms of the injuries he suffered, they've compounded with time. He had his knee replaced with a metal unit. An osteotomy left him with one leg 1.5 inches shorter than the other, which has affected his hips, his back and his neck. In 2002, nerve damage in his spine caused him to develop foot drop. He lost strength in his hands until he needed them both to lift a coffee cup. Still, Butkus maintains that football had a largely positive impact on his life and that its benefits should not be overlooked.
But you know what, man? Again, we go back to the boxing thing or MMA, whatever your sport is, right? And it's fine for people to find that brutal and awful, and they can find that. You know, the point is, it's not bullfighting. There's not an animal in there that's got no choice, right? There's a bloke there who loves football. That's his life, right? That was his way out of a lot for the boy. A lot of boys as a way of poverty as well. I know that might be a factor that adds pressure to it. But I'm just saying, on the whole, it's a relatively freely taken decision to go in there, put your body on the line, right? To smash people and to get smashed. And that's I don't think that's anybody else's business to get involved in that. You're not going to tell Dick Butkus that sport's not a great sport.
I watched the documentary BBC Wales did on Sam Warburton about a year ago, maybe 18 months ago. And it was a really, really good programme. And, you know, there's not a Welsh rugby fan on earth who hasn't been given incredible memories by Sam Warburton. What a player. Definitely. You know, what a player. But his body is in tatters. And I watched that documentary, and he was talking about, you know, how he, as soon as he retires, he'll never run again, and his knees are in, you know, pieces. And I occasionally think we are pushing our sports stars too far. It's too much of a sacrifice, but they would never ever change anything.
Well, did you see the Shane Williams doc that was on recently?
What about concussion?
It was fantastic. And when he speaks to that American doctor, who's basically saying, "Promise me, Shane, you won't let your son play. Promise." And his son's there, like putting his socks on and doing his boots up, you know.
Yeah.
And there is that. And obviously, my son plays, you know, good little level of rugby for his age. He's 10 years old. Yeah. And you, as a parent, you think of the injuries, but like if my dad had stopped me playing rugby, I loved rugby. I loved every second of it. I broke, you know, legs and arms and fingers and collarbones and noses, and I just love playing. You can't. What are we going to, without being too morose, mate, what are we going to make? 80, 85 if you're lucky?
Right.
Well,
yeah.
Well, so, you know, big dog's cock. You lose 10 years, but it's always the last 10 years. What does that even mean? Well, you lose 10 years of your life. It's the last 10 years when it's crap anyway. Who cares?
Do you know what? In this lockdown,
you're not going to live forever, mate.
Comedians football is every Tuesday. I often don't play because of work or, you know, whatever. And I've missed it so much because it's of a standard where I can still, you know, there's older, like Mark Steele plays. Mark is almost 60.
Yeah.
So and obviously there's some young players as well. But it's of a standard where I can completely compete. And I have missed it so much. And I did
that's the thing.
And I did think actually if I was injured in some way and I couldn't play comedians football again. It's the only football I play. I don't play for another team anymore. I would be gutted.
What is your first clip for this week, mate?
My first clip is a famous one. It's Derek Redmond in the semi-final of the 400 metres at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics.
It's gone very quickly, and Redmond has broken down. He's on the track, kneeling down, and Derek Redmond, well, his injury problem, the jinx has struck again.
You will recognise this clip if you have even the most passing interest in sport, because he was a world-class athlete. That's one thing I think that people forget about Derek Redmond. But he was in the semi-final. He was feeling good. He'd started well, and then at 250 metres, his hamstring tears. Now, he hobbles to a halt. He falls to the ground in agony, and then he starts again. Now, if you watch it, stewards and I think the Red Cross are trying to get on the track to help him. And he thinks, no, I'm going to finish. Now, the thing that's so moving about it is after 10 or 15 metres, and he's hobbling, obviously, you know, he's doing it on one leg. After 10 or 15 metres, his dad fights his way onto the track to help him. Now, for 30 years, I remember this happening. I assumed he was thinking, well, I've trained this hard. I've dedicated my entire life to this. There's no way I'm not actually going to finish. Now, I read about it today. It's not actually the case. He was so crazy with the adrenaline of running at the Olympics. He thought, if I hobble it, I could overtake another 4 people and still qualify for the final. And then I'll ice it, and then I'll be fine for the final on Saturday. And
his dad wrecked it for him.
Yes. So his dad comes on, he's like, "Get off, Dad."
Just about to catch this Danish guy.
It's now one of the iconic moments in Olympic history, I think. And it's used in a lot of the Olympic marketing. It's always used.
About like track invasions and stuff.
Yeah, in the...
This is what we don't want.
But in the montage...
Stewards video.
It's...
These are the guys we've got to take out.
Every training day for stewards shows this video.
But it's a bit like when you're showing that video at the BBC of Bobby Davro in the stocks falling off the stage.
Oh my God, that's horrific.
That is a health and
Lionel
safety
Blair.
no. Oh, Bobby, no. Oh, God,
Oh, Bobby! Oh, Bobby!
The problem is we're going to have to put this...
That's one of the worst things I've ever
We're
seen.
going to have to put that video on our feed now. It's
my God.
The first non-sporting video.
Dick Butkus has got nothing on that video.
Just to enlighten anyone who hasn't seen it.
Oh my God, it goes through me now.
Non-broadcast pilot. And Bobby Davro is in stocks on a stage, on a raised stage.
Standing stocks.
And it's the end of show number, and they're all singing, and he decides to dance in the stock. He tips forward, obviously can't break his fall because he's in a set of stocks.
Face first,
yeah. Which is still shown as a...
They think he's dead.
Oh my God, yeah.
And Lionel Blair's having a hissy fit.
It is also a complete rogues gallery of terrible late 80s light entertainment. Keith Chegwin's there, Lionel Blair. But anyway, I digress. Now that is now seen as one of the iconic moments of Olympic history. He was acting not Davro. He won a gold for slapstick. Anyway,
Lionel Blair failed a drug test. He'd been on poppers for 2 days.
Anyway, no, he was actually disqualified because he was assisted over the line by his dad. So that has been airbrushed out of history, that little fact. Now, he's now a motivational speaker, obviously. He ended up doing Celebrity Gladiators. He played for the Birmingham Bullets basketball team. He was a professional basketball player. He tried his hand at rugby union. He fancied playing sevens. Oh, this is an incredible thing I didn't realise. His sister, 28-year-old Karen, was 9 months pregnant. She watched her brother collapse onto the track and started to feel contractions.
Oh my God.
Now I watched it, and looking back, it is so irritating that the stewards try and stop him from running, and it's even more irritating that they stop his dad from helping him, because that whole clip is about parenthood as much as it is about athletics. But I read an interview with him, and he said, back in Barcelona, father and son battered away a succession of officials who tried and failed to convince them to clear the track. Jim, it turned out, was as much a bouncer as a buttress. I'd never heard my dad using 4-letter words, Derek said the following day. I learned a few new ones. I love the idea. Obviously, I go, fuck off, you cunt.
Thanks, Cal.
For the benefit of the tip, Kelly's just brought in a can of Strongbow for Mike.
Yeah.
Great work.
What a top wife.
I can't believe you choose to drink Strongbow.
It's a hot evening. I record this on the top floor of my house.
Yes.
When we're in the bar, it'd be different, but I think hot air rises. It gets very warm in here. Yeah. So I like Strongbow on ice. Although I'm not saying anything about beer 52, I might go downstairs and have an IPA later.
Yeah.
You never know.
The taste of caramel and pasties. But
this is actually I'm having a pint of vodka and Coke.
Right.
Oh, whoa.
Are you in crisis, Mike?
It's lockdown, isn't it? I mean...
Yes, but not a lock-in. There's a crucial difference between those two things.
I'm not espousing drinking. People seem to chime with our comments on British drinking culture and football last week. I'm not saying people should drink to excess. I'm just saying that in stressful times, have a couple of beers in your house, isn't it? A couple of Strongbows, a couple of beers.
Anyway, what I like about this clip is that he was actually disqualified. That's now been airbrushed.
That's what you like about it. You like the fact that the rules were enforced.
I thought it was such a shame when I read that.
Yeah.
I thought, for God's sake, in that the same attitude that you have towards kids' sport, I thought, let it go, let him finish.
I read actually that Redmond, while he was kind of commiserating after this, went to the athletes' village and, got resolutely pissed, because why wouldn't you? And Sharon Davis has had an equally bad Olympics that time round, and the two of them hooked up.
Yeah, they got married
as a result of
in
that.
the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
In the words of the great Linford Christie, enough respect.
Right, for my first clip this week, I'm going to take you back to 1987. The Royal It's a Knockout had just happened. Pat Cash has just won.
God.
It's not the Royal It's a Knockout, although
thank God.
The Football League are celebrating their centenary as an organisation, so they think, let's organise a football match between the Football League and the rest of the world.
Whiteside crossing it in, Robson! Oh, the Manchester United combination struck there for the Football League, and Robson gets his second goal of the game and makes it an emphatic 3-0 scoreline.
So you've got Maradona, Platini, Lineker, Berthold, Josimar. You've got some really worthwhile players being there. Incidentally, Maradona only turned up. This was during his Napoli period, so money may have been an influencing factor.
He'd been a cokehead since 1984.
£100,000 got you Maradona.
Yeah,
No way.
Fantastic. And they announce them all out like it's the Super Bowl as well. So they make them all run out individually. They make Maradona run from the old tunnel out onto the pitch at Wembley maybe a year and 2 months after the Hand of God.
it's not just the Hand of God. It's 5 years after the Falklands.
Yep.
So the England-Argentina rivalry, there's so much more to it than football. So he was detested by English football fans, Maradona.
The Football League team is being coached by Bobby Robson.
I love Bobby Robson.
Yeah,
You know, you said,
Absolutely love the man. But he picks Neil Webb to start and puts Ozzy Ardiles on the bench.
Well,
What a
also, is fascinating. Ozzy Ardiles is the only person who's not born in Britain and Ireland in the Football
Yes.
League. Can you imagine what a Premier League team would be like now?
Oh, man.
Well, this was
2
on
or
the
3
TV,
English players at most.
and it was quite a big deal of a game. It's not actually. The rest of the world team are actually rubbish during
And they're
this
not
game.
trying either. That's the
They
thing.
couldn't care less.
Brian Robson thinks it's a World Cup final.
He thinks that this is you've got to as well remember that this is post Heysel Stadium as well. So this is during all the Football League sides being banned from playing in Europe. So it was on TV and it was a really big deal. But for people like Paul McGrath, Chris Waddle, this was their chance to play in front of players who were, ostensibly better than them and try and prove them wrong. And Norman Whiteside and guys like that and Liam
Whiteside!
Brady.
It's that one word that sticks in my mind. He scored a screamer of a goal once.
In the 85 FA Cup final for Man United.
And it was just that one word screamed out Whiteside. It's always
Yeah.
stuck in my memory.
Also, the amazing thing with Norman Whiteside,
Wasn't he 17?
he was 17, played
Yes,
in
he
the
was.
82 World Cup. When he's lining up to sing the anthem, he looks about 50. Like, there's an amazing Twitter account, footballers aging in the
Oh, it's
80s.
just superb.
They're all 22 and look about 65.
What the sub goalkeeper in this game for the Football League is Steve Grizovic.
Yeah,
I
amazing.
can't imagine Steve Grizovic ever looking teenage.
No.
That's a man who was born maybe at a push 42.
Well, there's an amazing picture of Kevin Ratcliffe, the ex-Everton of Wales centre-half, playing for an under-15s team in North Wales. And he's got a moustache. He looks like Tom Selleck.
They all look older than the Everton side now.
Yeah.
Well, like a Charlton when he played. I mean, it was just... the hair didn't help, did it? I mean...
No.
I thought, why they pick like a 55-year-old man on the team? But he was like... Was he 24, 25 at the time?
Robson plays his arse off in this game and absolutely dominates the entire thing. I think...
What a player.
Certainly if you were an English football fan in the 80s, you were either Hoddle or Robson. Because they are two different perspectives on how to play in midfield. And Bobby Robson loved Brian Robson.
Yes.
And Hoddle, if you talk to any European sort of footballer or football manager, they would say, well, if Hoddle had been French, they'd have built, Platini said this, we'd have built the French team around Glenn Hoddle. And he only got 53 caps, but he didn't really like getting stuck in. Whereas Brian Robson used to get stuck in every 90 seconds or so and then would miss 6 months of the season because he'd dislocate his shoulder or he'd, break his leg or whatever. But still, what a player. I mean, a great player.
Oh, he's ridiculous. Pat Nevin played in this game as well.
Pat Nevin, one of my favourite footballers ever, for being fined a week's wages for going to an art gallery.
Now, in the 80s, that was not an acceptable part of the Everton tour.
Everton were in New York and they were told to go on the piss all day as a team bonding session because they had new players who'd just been, bought that summer. And he said, "Well, I'd love to, but there's an exhibition I'd really like to see, so I'll come after I've done that." And then he went to that, and they fined him a week's wages.
He used to buy 2 copies of the NME from memory, one at the top of his kit bag for the rest of the Everton team to find, pull out, and rip up and take the piss out of him, and then one at the bottom of his kit bag that he would read.
Superb.
But yeah, I'd read a lot about it, but I never actually seen any of the footage. So I loved watching this back.
It's one of the memories as a kid that I have of watching football, because like I say, because it was such a big deal. It was in the summer. It was sort of pre-Charity Shield, if memory serves me right. And I think that year as well, the MCC had played a rest of the world cricket side, and just in my head then, the greatest playing together was just this fantastic thing. And
you get far less of that in football exhibition matches than you get in other sports.
Football's quite a partisan. I mean, obviously all sport is by nature, right? But it's extremely partisan, football, right? And those games don't really mean anything, do they? They don't really mean... You're not a fan of the Football League.
No. You
know what I mean?
But this is what Robson can't get his head around in the post-match press conference. Bobby Robson kicks off because all the press are basically saying the rest of the world team didn't really care. And he's like, this is a great day for the English game.
The next time someone asks
Come
me
on, the Football League! Fuck off!
Next time someone asks me if I like sport, we say, I'm a really big fan of the Football League, actually.
Who's your favourite team? The Football League.
I just want the Football League to be the winner.
So documentary choice this week falls to Elis. What have you gone for this week?
It is one of my favourite pieces of television ever. It is, unfortunately, I think, forgotten. It hasn't actually got that many views on YouTube when I checked. It's called Home and Away, not the Australian soap, obviously, and it follows 27 Liverpool and Everton fans who make their way down from Merseyside to London for the 1984 Milk Cup final, which was the first all-Merseyside Wembley Cup final. So obviously 2 years later they played in the 86 FA Cup, and then it happened again in 89, because in those years, 80 to 90, I think Liverpool or Everton won the league 9 times. Villa won it in the early 80s, didn't they? And Arsenal won it obviously 88, 89. So in the main, it was those two teams were absolutely dominant. But Liverpool, who'd been a great side since Shankly's era, were used to Wembley. Everton hadn't had a cup final since the 60s.
I just used to love being a kid, and you had no responsibilities and didn't have to worry about nothing. You come in and your ma dressed you. Well, she didn't dress you, she bought you clothes, like, she fed you, And it was a good time, and we'd go down and get the ferry over and go to New Brighton. And it cost nothing. And there was sand there then as well. And you could go to the fair, That's all gone now.
So it is massive. It's an enormous game. Now, what I love about it, obviously, is that it's now famous for being the final where Liverpool and Everton fans sing Merseyside, 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 because there's barely any segregation. Now, that game was always known as the friendly derby. It's not that anymore. That has disappeared, but it was certainly true in the 80s when at Anfield and Goodison it was largely people from Merseyside watching the matches anyway. Now, I love football, and I love what it means to people. And the thing I will find endlessly fascinating, because obviously this isn't really about the game, this is about the people, this is about the supporters, is that football moves people like all sport does, almost like anything, like nothing else. But those people aren't in isolation. They are, they've got their own lives and stuff. And obviously Liverpool in the mid-80s was terribly deprived. Youth unemployment in certain parts of Liverpool in the 80s was at 90%. Now, I was talking to a mate of mine who was from Walton, and he left school in 1986. There were 200 boys in his year. 199 of them were unemployed. One of them got a job as a van driver's mate, and they held a special assembly in his honour. Now, that is the story of the city. Now, Liverpool's absolutely...
Why, though? I don't understand why he was so deprived.
Absolutely...
Was there just the docks, and when the docks folded, there was nothing?
Yeah, there was... And, we'll talk about this in a second, but the unemployment in Liverpool was horrific, and those government papers were released under the 30-year rule a couple of years ago, where they were going to put Liverpool into a kind of managed decline. That was the phrase they used, because they just thought, it's gone, it's over. You can't rescue Liverpool. Liverpool is done. And obviously then you've got Derek Hatton as head of Liverpool City Council. Now, there's a very good documentary called Two Tribes by BT Sport, which was on the other night. And there's a very good book called There She Goes, Liverpool in the Long Decade, 1980 to 1993. If you want to read about the sort of socio-economic stuff. But what I find fascinating about Home and Away is because it's fly on the wall, they've just got a camera on the bus as they're coming down from Liverpool to London. A third of Liverpool's men, the city of Liverpool's men, went to Wembley for that game. The thing I find incredible, obviously we're all of an age, we were all alive in 1984. Britain has changed so much. It is unrecognisable.
From top to bottom. I mean,
from top to bottom.
I mentioned on Twitter, the best thing about doing this podcast for me, right, is for 2/3 of it, when I shut my big mouth, I'm just a fascinated listener.
Yeah.
Or I'm just getting steers to watch things I probably wouldn't have watched. And I watched that for the second time this morning. It's absolutely amazing. I can't believe. I mean, I was saying to you off air, Al, that, in '86 I went to Wembley with my dad to see a game up there. So, and that seems fairly recent in my memory. So it wasn't ancient history, '84. It's like a different universe. I can't.
Yeah.
I mean everything, from the cars to the way the police are,
the food,
the way that. The food, the bloody,
the beer, the terrible beer they're drinking.
I couldn't. There's a bit though. It's the first time in the episodes we've done that I've actually took note because I was so fascinated. There's a bit when they go into the West End.
Yeah.
After trying to get a late drink after the pubs close. One bloke's got a kebab.
Yes.
It blows his mate's mind.
Yeah.
They've never seen anything like it. And he describes it as like a pasty where the insides have come out, right? And he gives it to his mate to taste because he doesn't trust it. He's never seen anything like it before.
And he can't believe he's paid £150 for it. I've done a lot of football trips on coaches and on minibuses.
Yeah.
Even though they're getting hammered.
Yes.
It's a very naive kind of entertainment in that one of the older lot has an acoustic guitar and they just have a sing along.
Yeah.
And then they go to the West End, which, as someone who lives in London, is the worst place for a drink anyway, in suits. And they take the guitar with them and they find it.
Why not?
And they have a sing along in the pub on a Saturday night.
But they also sing "Here We Go." Now, at what point did football fans stop generic songs?
I thought that was something that kids would sing on stuff like Grange Hill and Biker Grove.
I didn't think it was real.
I didn't think it was real.
Like full Chester Rovers against somebody in some major comic strip.
Yeah.
This is so of its time. The bloke doing the narration on it, I don't know who it is, but it's quite a received pronunciation, sort of quite a clip English accent. But he must talk about 4 times in an hour.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just a proper fly on the wall. Then before the adverts, you'll say like one line, and then that's it, and then go on with it again.
The thing I found so moving was the Astons, the little titles, with the person's name.
Yes.
It will always be, Paul, unemployed painter and decorator, David, unemployed plasterer, Mike, unemployed roofer. And a couple of them, but one of them specifically explicitly says it to camera. He says, when we go down there today, and we show that there's no trouble and there's no segregation and that we're good people and that the game passes without incident, hopefully the government, Thatcher, they'll watch it and they'll be so impressed they'll invest in the city and create jobs in Liverpool. And you're like, mate, how naive can you be?
Yeah.
And
also,
he means
well,
it. He's not taking the piss. He means it.
No.
Those little indents, whatever it's called, Astons, was it?
Yeah.
You do more TV than I do. The one fellow's an unemployed electrician. There was an unemployed mechanic, like you said, right? The other bloke, Steve Waldron, just unemployed.
Yeah.
Just unemployed. Well, yeah, what you do? I'm just unemployed. So, but fair play to Steve Waldron. He's not bullshitting, is he? If you're, I mean, your job is what you do. So if you're an unemployed electrician, what does that mean? I mean, I'm an unemployed president.
It's very sad.
I spent all my summers and all my school holidays, all through the 80s and the 70s, in Merthyr, because obviously my granddad was a miner, my grandmother was all through the miners' strike when I was like 11, 12 years old, and seeing that. And it was very, very similar that you just think, fuck, man, this place has had a hard time.
Yeah.
And everybody is going through it. But there's bits in there that are so brilliant, and it's about the human spirit. And I think in those working class places sometimes as well, there's a bit there where a woman's, all the girls that come the Wembley Widows are watching TV on the sofa there, and some woman had a hard time off some other bloke that her husband had gone down to Wembley, right? And she says, it's nothing to do with you, basically. She's saying, I work. And he's going, and he had a problem with the fact that she was working. Yeah. He was unemployed, and her money was basically paid for him to go to Wembley. But she was incensed by that. I thought, fair play to you, love. And then she sort of jokingly said, we can't eat for 2 weeks, but why shouldn't he go and enjoy himself? I couldn't believe the coach the Liverpool players were on. It was the same sort of like Happy Valley's coach that all the supporters were on, right? Yeah. Just velour seats, no bog. Yeah. Just thinking, my God, these are like the cream of the cream.
It's cream Souness.
Yeah. This is the cream of the crop. Well, Souness is and then Souness gets there. He gets to Wembley Stadium. He's been travelling on this crappy coach. He looks like he's on a set from Slade Prison in Porridge. Just spinning through a hatch trying to get in like some family friends, like family members, a couple of tickets off some bloke. Yeah. Well, he pulls a hand, he goes, I promised him 4 tickets.
Wait there.
And he is Europe's best midfielder.
There's no one at the club who does it for him.
No liaison.
He's got 4 tickets, bang on the door by the player's entrance, ask for me.
What I found
bang,
amazing...
Bang, Graham Souness there?
What I found amazing was that England, Liverpool and London looked tired. Wembley looks tired. I mean, Wembley obviously built in 1923, so its facilities had dated considerably by 1984. The people look tired. Everyone looks knackered and grey.
They do. I don't know why. I mean, I'd love to have been the bloke making the doc going, we haven't got on here. We haven't got anybody in a prison talking about it. And they're going to Walton jail, right? And there's these 2 lags. But again, they say how much things have changed, right? Nowadays, that would be like an Albanian murderer and some bloke who's a crack dealer. It were 2 blokes who looked like my granddad, right? One was an Everton fan, one was a Liverpool fan. Sat on the same cell, listening to it on the radio, having a bit of banter for a fucking Mars bar. That was the bet. It wasn't like 4 raps of speed. It was like, winner gets a Mars bar.
The most wholesome prison in the world.
You watch Porridge and think, bullshit, Porridge. There's nothing like that in prison. It turns out Porridge is basically a documentary.
Those 2 aren't in the documentary apart from that one scene.
Yeah.
So you're right, they have just gone. Gary, can you go get someone from jail as well?
It's Liverpool, mate. What should we do? Jail?
Yeah. Let's just shoehorn it in.
Also, absolutely inconceivable that any women would want to go to the game. The Wembley Widows.
Yeah.
So it is out of the question.
There's the one woman, I think she's Everton supporter, just getting her knickers out, but she's got the world's longest skirt. I mean,
she's mooning the Queen.
Well, the one bloke says that he's definitely going to invade the pitch. He's decided, right? That's going to happen whatever happens. He says, I'm going to bear me ask the Queen Mother. He was chuffed. Why the fuck's the Queen Mother there?
The milk
the Queen Mother watching the milk cup. Can you imagine it? I mean, describe it at the beginning. I think, this is now obviously the League Cup these days, right? Which people don't really take any notice of, to be honest. The match of the century it was built.
Yeah.
And the
Queen Mother. Queen Mother.
Who must have been about 80 then?
Well, she would have been 84 because she was born in 1900, wasn't she? When it shows the Wembley Widows on the piss in Liverpool on the Saturday night, 'cause the League Cup's always on
Flames
Sunday.
Disco.
Flames Disco.
I'd have been straight to Flames Disco, mate.
No.
Don't you worry about that.
To anyone.
Coming down, Mike, for Wembley? Are all the lads going?
Yeah.
Every bloke in the city's going.
Interesting.
Now, the Flames Disco, if you need any evidence as to what Acid House did to nightclubbing culture in Britain, Flames Disco, what a mess.
Oh, superb.
It is, they're standing there. They're just standing. They all look like they're going to job interviews. The men are all in suits. The women are all...
There's about 2 blokes in the whole place.
Yeah, and they all look like they're sort of working for the civil servants. And they're dancing around their handbags to come on over to my place by the Drifters, which is at quite a low volume.
Come on over to my place.
And it's just... Also, when they're in the bar, when they're in the club, or the pub rather, the night before, the Saturday night before, in the West End, so just off Piccadilly Circus or Leicester Square area, they start talking to some women in the bar and find out that they've got jobs.
But the one girl works for the dole. They think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
If you got a job, works for the dole. She works for the dole.
Yeah, I've got a job. Hey, she's got a job. She's got a job.
But
the Spaniard's got a job.
I don't know who edited that, but they spend the next 5 minutes just talking about who has got a job. What's the song they're singing about being from Liverpool, which is
in my Liverpool home.
Yeah. One of the proudest boasts in that song is they've got 2 spare cathedrals.
Yes.
Can you imagine, like, ultras singing that song now?
Got a cathedral to spare.
Yeah.
If you want a cathedral, we've got 2 to spare. What the fuck? What? No, we don't want a cathedral.
But there's that one unemployed bloke at the start, and he says, I love being a kid because your mum would sort out your clothes and she'd feed you, and you don't have anything to worry about, and it's horrible being an adult. And you watch it, and
it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Football played such an important part in their lives.
It was massive.
Because obviously Liverpool and Everton were such successful teams in that era. Because a few weeks later, Everton played in the FA Cup final against Watford in '84, and Everton won the FA Cup. Fantastic. They won the Cup Winners' Cup the year after that. They'd won the league a couple of times. Liverpool the same. Obviously, winning European Cups for fun in the '80s. What I'm fascinated by, especially Liverpool fans, they were going to Paris and they were going to Rome on gyros. They were just bunking the ferry. Despite
all, we're having a laugh about it, it is a real snapshot of life at that time, and it is bleak. But I still, when they're all on the bus and they're playing cards and they're having to sing song, the bloke gets the guitar, they're singing like For the Good Times or whatever they're singing. I really miss that as well. I think at the same time, I really miss that utter passion for the game and that real camaraderie and that. There's a lot to be said. There's a lot of positive stuff in that as well.
Because 2 Tribes, the BT Sport version, which was made last year, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It's talking to a lot of those people, but 30 years on.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they say. They say it was the only thing we had. We had that and bands. An awful lot of bands in Liverpool. At one stage, 18 bands from the British top 40 were bands from Liverpool. Oh. And you had the Lars and Echo and the Bunnymen and Frankie Goes to Hollywood and all that stuff. But it's just...
But there's a bit where they've decided, the Everton players have decided that win or lose.
Yes.
Or draw. Yeah. Or draw. This is the key. Win, lose or draw. They're on the piss. Right? So they've got... This is Saturday evening. They're playing again on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And they're all in the bus
in a cup final.
Drinking. Yeah, they're all in the bus drinking on that.
Yeah.
Starting again on Wednesday. We agreed we're having it.
Well, it's the Sunday. The League Cup final's on the Sunday.
All right, if you go to the YouTube channel, if you search for Socially Distant Sports Bar on YouTube, we'll put up, because this is split into 5 little parts on YouTube, so we'll put up all the parts in sequence as part of the playlist for this week. So round 2 of clips. Mike, you are up to the microphone first. What have you got for us this time round?
Yeah, this is unusually for me. Alice will approve of this. This is a football clip. I just love this. This is somebody decided that I think England were going to go to China and sort of spread the game to China. I love this. England decide they can't go, so the FA send West Brom instead, right? And this is West Bromwich Albion's tour of China in 1970.
You got a Great Wall of China, thousands of miles long, only man-made structure you can see from the moon. And John Truitt turns around and says, well...
I mean, you've seen one wall, you've seen them all, haven't you?
And there we go. I mean, I know Elis is a big fan of food. The bit when they're sat there, they said that they hated it. They could not wait to get home. They said they're 3 weeks fat forever, right? Yeah. And there's a bit where you see him trying to use chopsticks. I'm loving this, right? And then you've got to watch it quite carefully. Someone goes, "Have you got any fish and chips?" It's superb. Yeah, I don't know what the thinking behind sending West Brom to China was. There's a bit in the stadium there where obviously it was Mao China. It wasn't a lot more open like it is today.
Yeah.
And they'd been told by the authorities, which meant do this or you're going to be dead. Don't make any noise during the game.
Yeah, amazing.
So they show the team at half time, and the crowd are completely silent for a game of football. And there's like 80,000 people in one of these huge Chinese stadiums.
What I find hilarious is that culturally, you couldn't really get much more different to West Bromwich and Oldbury and the Black Country, the West Midlands, to China in the late 70s. It just does not get more
it includes the quote, they got the Great Wall of China. And he says, you've seen one wall, you've seen them all.
Yeah. No, not one of the players decides to try and enjoy it on a cultural level.
No,
at all.
No. It's like they've made a decision, this is going to be awful, let's not get through this.
Not one of them goes into it with an open mind and says, we're never coming back here. So let's try and see as much as we can, try and enjoy it. Even if you don't enjoy it, just have a nosy, have a look around.
You've seen one wall, you've seen them all.
But you haven't, though, haven't you? It's not true. It's not true. Iwan Roberts, who I love dearly, one of my favourite people, played for Watford in the late 80s when Elton John was still there. And Elton John took them on a tour of China in 1987. And I was talking to him about this, and I said, "What was it like?" And he went, "Oh, I hated it. Hated the food." I said,
Chinese food.
I said, "I love Chinese food." He went, "There wasn't a Chinese in Harlech in different Ardidi, so I'd never tried it before." So I said, "So what were you eating out there?" He went, "I took a suitcase of Kit Kats."
They show how they sit down dinner, and they just look. They've decided before they get on at Birmingham Airport, they're going to have a shit time of it.
Yeah.
And they're determined for that to happen. So, but it must have been a very weird. I mean, we think of China these days as it's obviously a very different country, but it must have been such a culture shock for those boys.
Oh,
to see him walking around having a thoroughly awful time. I remember my old man, right, when he in about 1980 won some competition, right. And it was 2 tickets, all expenses paid, to Moscow, right?
Right.
My dad gamed to his mate Tony and his wife Gail because you couldn't think of anything worse than going to Moscow for 2 weeks because it was so different.
No, thanks.
Moscow, shouldn't have thought so.
No. Right, my second clip for this week is kind of inspired by Dick Butkus from earlier on. I've gone for a guy who gets a massive injury very early on in a game and kind of plays through ridiculous pain. So this is the 2014 NRL Grand Final, and playing for South Sydney Rabbitohs in this one is Sam Burgess.
One of the most awaited Grand Finals of all time. Burgess, and taken by Graham. Burgess has come away pointing at his cheekbone, I think.
So it's from the kick. Burgess catches it and runs into Graham, who's another English player who's playing out there, and he just caves his cheekbone in. There's no other way of describing it. His cheekbone just absolutely collapses on him, and he's sort of holding it in the tackle immediately. A couple of doctors come on, who he sort of ushers away. And then this highlights package kind of cuts to maybe 2 minutes into the game, and you see him just, again, smashing into another tackle. And you think, oh, he's gonna carry on. And he carries on for the whole game.
And plays great as well.
Yeah.
Just plays out of his skin. He absolutely dominates it. Now, for a bit of context for why he feels like he has to do this, the Rabbitohs are this fantastic side sort of in the 50s, 60s and 70s. And then in the 90s, they're chucked out of the NRL when a guy who, if you're into Welsh Rugby Union, a guy called David Moffat is in charge of the NRL. And there'll be a lot of Welsh rugby fans who don't like David Moffat because he kind of got rid of the club game over here. In the NRL, a lot of Rabbitohs fans don't like him because he got rid of them. And they eventually come back in, and then Russell Crowe chucks a load of money into it, takes it over in 2010, and he's filming Robin Hood over here at the time, and sees Sam Burgess playing for Bradford, brings him and his 3 brothers and their mum over to Sydney to play for them. And they've not been at this stage since then. So since the 70s, they've not won a grand final. So Burgess caves his cheekbone in, decides to carry on playing. At half-time, there are 2 moments that are fantastic. There's an interview as he's going down the tunnel where there's an Australian interviewer who goes, how's the cheek, mate? He just goes, it's fucked. Thanks very much. And then it carries on going down the tunnel. And then he meets the doctor in the change room. The doctor says to him, look, Sam, can you come into the back room? We need to have a bit of a chat. And he's like, look, there's nothing you're going to say now that is going to convince me to come off the field. Just leave me alone. He said, right, there are 2 things you need to know. If you get hit again, your eye may fall out. He said, I don't care. I'm playing the second half. Secondly, he says, whatever you do, don't blow your nose, and walks off.
Jesus.
Whatever you do, don't blow your nose. And there is no context for what might happen if he blows his nose.
Because you watch him play in that game, you watch the offloads and watch the running. I've never broken a cheekbone. I've known people who have broken a cheekbone. That's a serious, like you're saying, that's a nasty injury, a cheekbone.
Yeah.
You know, if someone says to you at half-time, your eye, you get hit in the cheek and your eye's going to pop out.
Yeah. Your eye's going to fall out. Not you're going to get slightly injured here. Your eye is going to fall out of your face.
Also,
I might not play the second half, if I'm honest.
Was it Jamie Roberts who fractured his skull?
He did, yes. Hit his head against Sterling Mortlock against Australia and fractured his skull.
He fractured his skull and he plays on.
Yeah.
And then you see footage of him tackling in the same way that, you know, Butkus style.
Yeah.
Now, what I don't understand, I've never, fun fact, I've never played through pain.
Good lad.
And I never will.
What I have did is not turn up for football because I've got an earache. I mean, I'm sort of... Now, Mike is the man for playing through pain. You've played through pain, haven't you?
I've played with broken bones now. I've broken bones in games and played. I broke a hand bone quite badly, and then it was so strapped up that it looked like a boxing glove because it was killing me. And then I remember I scored a try in the second half and landed on the broken hand, and I was in bloody agony with it. But I mean, a hand's a hand, isn't it? I mean, the worst that would have happened there was that my hand would be a bit knackered. You do
need a hand.
Mine's not done. Well, you got 2 of them.
I find Dick Butkus needs both to pick up a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
you can't just disregard.
I use my hands all the time.
Yeah, I say they're 2 of the top things I use.
When I broke my leg, I was about 18 when I broke my leg, and my dad, I've told the story I think to Elis before. My dad refused to believe me. My dad was old school Dick Butkus style.
Refused to believe you.
I broke my leg on a Saturday morning, and I said, and I was at the time a decent rugby player,
Right.
I said, Dad, I broke my leg. I was in agony. I heard it crack as I got tackled, and I came off. But he knew the referee, right? So the referee was going, is he off? He's going, give him a minute. He said, get up. I said, Dad, my leg's broke. Get up. Stood up. He said, right, have a trot on it. I went, trot it off. I went, it's broken, Dad. I heard it break. You'd be in agony if it was broken. I said, I am in agony. He wouldn't have it, right? Is he off? No, I'm going to give us 2 minutes, ref. So I had a trot on it because I didn't want to let my dad down. And I just collapsed into a heap on the floor, right? And he was appalled, my old man, by my lack of fucking moral fibre. So we had to watch the rest of the game. Right? We then went home, and then Saturday afternoon, his biggest concession to me was that he let me sit on the recliner. We had a recliner chair.
Yeah, we had a recliner.
That was his grandstand chair, right? he let me have the grandstand chair and got my mum to get a bag of frozen peas on my ankle, right, which is now the size of a balloon. And I was in fucking bits with this ankle, right? So Sunday morning, my leg's now going black from the knee down. And I said, Dad, this is definitely broken, right? And Mum said, for Christ's sake, Bob, take him into hospital. I think he's broken his leg. He hasn't broken his bloody... I'll take you in. He said, if you're going to moan all weekend, I'll take you in, right?
Great dad response.
He drove me to hospital, into Cardiff, right? I went in there. I'd broken my tib and my fib in 2 places, right? Basically 4 breaks. Oh. And my knee ligaments had gone. So I was in a full cast. I was in a cast on my hip to my toe. And I came out of the plaster room. My old man's face dropped because he thought... First thing he thought was not, oh, my son's all right, my only begotten son. He was thinking, my wife's going to kick the shit out of me as soon as I walk in the front door, right? So, but the point being, I came off then, right? To break a cheekbone and play on in a game like rugby league. This is the thing. You're playing rugby league, where I would say 70% of tackles in rugby league would be a penalty in rugby union.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also they're going to target you because they can see that you've broken your cheekbone.
But you could see it because he's obviously
his face is caved in.
He's a fit, strong bloke. One cheekbone isn't there anymore.
Right, Al, what is your final clip for this week?
It's a short one. It is Francesco Totti, who, lest we forget, is one of the greats of Italian football. He played in the World Cup winning side in the 2006 World Cup. Also, he was a one-club man for Roma, so he played until he was 40. Now, the thing with Roma, they are one of the big clubs in Italian football, but they're probably more similar to Newcastle United in the sense that they're a huge, very well-supported club with a massive stadium, but they're not particularly successful. I think they've won the league 3 times, whereas Juve won it 35 times and Inter won it 18 times. And he is worshipped. They've retired the number 10 shirt. Football begins and ends with Totti for Roma fans. I met a bloke from Caerphilly once, and he was a young kid, and I said, "Who do you support?" Because I knew he was a big football fan.
Football.
I expected him to say, I thought he's either going to say Cardiff City because he's from Caerphilly, or he's probably going to be a Premier League team. And he said Roma, and I said, why is that then? He went Totti. I just love Totti. Now, he was a good player. What I love about Totti, he loves playing so much. He now turns out in a Monday night 8-a-side league that, brilliant. There's the power leagues in Cardiff down sort of in Grangetown, or Gaul down in Leckwith. Yeah. Anyone can play in this. Now, he's not playing in a Roma Legends game against, Real Madrid Legends or Man United Legends. He is playing against a team from a car garage, and he's playing against a team from a fish restaurant. But he's one of the greatest strikers Italian football has ever produced. So inevitably, he is absolutely brilliant. Now, every now and then, a player will retire and they'll turn out at a lower league game. I remember Paul Merson did it in Wales. And Merson obviously now is overweight, and he came on and he played the first half or something, and that was that. So I read an article about this, and someone at the league said, I thought he'd play maybe 2 or 3 times all year, but he plays every week. I think he's missed only 2 games. One, because he was doing the draw for the Euros. The other, because he went to play 6-a-side in Germany, our Legends team, against their Legends team. He is addicted to playing, and he loves the pre-match stuff, the post-match stuff, the fact they sort of, fruit tarts instead of energy bars and things before games. He just loves playing with his mates, I think, and I think he just loves playing football. And this free kick went viral, because obviously now this Monday night 8-a-side league has got an enormous interest online, and he scores screamers every week, and they go viral. This is a free kick that I was very impressed with. But as someone who has played in those leagues, imagine turning up on a Monday night and you've got Admiral Insurance away and on they come, in their ramshackle kit, and Wayne Rooney is there just because he fancies turning out for
I love that,
British Gas or something.
I just think there's, we mentioned it with the Butkus thing earlier with injury. I just think there's players who love it so much, want to just keep playing and playing and playing. I love to see that.
Also, he wasn't playing for Newport County. Like, he was one of the world's best players.
He went from the top.
Yeah, from Serie A down to Roma, 8-a-side league on a Tuesday night.
Lineker hasn't kicked a ball since the day he retired, because he ended his career in Japan and he hasn't kicked a ball. He's not interested. And a lot of players like that, just not interested.
I like the idea of someone collecting Totti's subs sort of after the game.
Well,
where's your £8?
Yeah,
Simon Davis, the ex-Spurs and Everton and Fulham player, he was playing in the Pembrokeshire Leagues. And I think
playing for Solver, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think he stopped because local fishermen were just trying to break his legs. And I think it wasn't much fun. But Totti, he doesn't care.
Right, books for this week. I'm going to go first because I didn't realise that I've picked one by the same guy that you picked one by last week, Elis.
Yeah.
So I've gone for one of David Winner's other books.
It is superb, though.
It's called Brilliant Orange, The Neurotic Genius of Dutch Football. And it's a really kind of slim tome, but first of all, first thing about it that I loved immediately was the chapter numbers are out of sequence. So the whole sort of total football vibe of everyone's got to play everywhere immediately is taken on board by the way that they've structured the book. Attention to detail like that just stands out in my head straight away. He sort of relates, I don't know, art, culture, football, architecture, even the sort of geography of the Netherlands to the football. It's all kind of interrelated. There's one quote, I think it was on the cover, that God made the world, but the Dutch made Holland. And it's kind of the juxtaposition of being Dutch compared to anything else in relation to football is fantastic. There are a lot of these books out there now that go in depth about trying their hardest to relate culture to football. So there's one about Brazil, which is really, really good, but a lot thicker. Football.
Oh, yes.
It's called.
Futbol.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant book, but it's much more in depth. What Winner has done really well in this is just condense his thoughts down so well. And it's the prototype of those books. So yeah, I know it's kind of turning into a fan club of Winner, but it's a beautiful book, and I think it's really well brought together. And Mike, what have you gone for this week?
So this is Bobby Dazzler, the Bobby George story, basically. I love darts. I've always been a big darts fan. This book, if you want to really... We're talking about characters, right? Bobby George is an absolute perler of a character, right? So he didn't start playing professional darts till he was 30. He'd done everything. Like, he's a big, tough, strong bloke. Grew up in sort of 60s London. I think he worked at the door, knew the Crays, knew the Frasers. Worked building the underground and the tube, and was a labourer. And at 30 decided he could just play darts. It's not hard to do. This is easier than what I'm doing now. So basically taught himself to play darts. Ended up being sort of one of the top 3 or 4 players in the world. But just a real showman. You know, obviously Bobby Dazzler's his nickname. A previous nickname was Mr. Glitter. He dropped that for obvious reasons. And just this larger-than-life bloke who then built his own house, because he'd been a builder as well. He bought a big plot of land in Essex, built an 18-bedroom mansion himself called George House, right? Yeah. Which is like something Alan Partridge is doing.
Ye House. Yeah. The cinemas.
Yeah. So he built George House, which is an 18-bedroom mansion where the rooms are arranged. He designed it himself as well. Arranged as a dartboard, basically.
No.
Right? Yeah, it's true story.
Come on.
I just love him. I mean, it's a really entertaining read, and if you love that sort of seedy 60s, 70s underworld that was going on in London as well, and I love all that sort of stuff. It's fascinating.
Al, what's yours for this week?
The book I have chosen is Hunter Davies's The Glory Game from 1972. And Hunter Davies is also famous as a biographer of the Beatles. He wrote the official biography of the Beatles, which is really good. The thing with The Glory Game is he spent an entire season with Spurs and unrivalled access. He was at the after-match parties. He sat in the bath with them after training. He was allowed in the dressing room.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
it's research, lads. Research.
Well, Bill Nicholson.
Who's that?
Pass the Mr. Matey.
Bill Nicholson, who was the manager, actually grew to regret the amount of access he was given because a lot of the players weren't happy with the way they were portrayed. Now, that Spurs team, obviously, under Nicholson in 61, 11 years previously, they'd won the double. It wasn't quite that team, but it was still a good side. They won the UEFA Cup that year. So you had people like Martin Chivers and Alan Mullery and Steve Perryman and Mike England as well. It's not really a blow-by-blow account of the season. It's more to do with the relationships in the dressing rooms and how players were recovering from injury, what they're like with the other players and their relationship with Bill Nicholson, the manager. On every page, there will be some little descriptive thing that makes you realise how commercialism has changed football over the last 50 years or so. The other interesting thing is at the end of the book, in the appendix, he talks to their wives and also he asks them what newspaper they buy and how they voted at the last election or what their politics are. So it's very interesting because there's so many of them are Tories. They're all they're not particularly rich or well off, but a lot of them are conservative voting, which I found quite interesting. So it's a fascinating snapshot of a specific era, and anyone who criticises the book by saying it's dated doesn't get it or doesn't get why it's interesting, I think. So yeah, the Glory Game by Hunter Davies, especially if you're a Spurs fan, it will be an amazing read. But if you're interested in sporting history in general, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Right, leave us a review or a rating if your podcast provider lets you do that. Make sure you subscribe as well. If you have a guess as to the identity of the secret guitarist, Mikey has suggested Kelly Jones. Robin Friday 27, who I'm guessing is a Cardiff City fan, judging by that handle. The mystery guitarist has got to be James Dean Bradfield. Welsh Beck goes with the guitarist JDB as his guess as well. If you go to our Instagram, you can hear the full theme there without us rambling over the top of it. It's at Distant Pod on Instagram. You'll be able to click on one of the videos there and you can see the whole thing. If you have not yet claimed your free beer, what are you doing with your life?
Do it.
Beer52.com/distant. 8 free beers in the post headed your way. Right, that's us for this week. We will be back with another one of these this time next week. Thank you for your company, gentlemen.
Cheers, Steff.
Thank you very much.